The sky was heavy with dark clouds as the first drops of rain began to fall, dotting the cracked pavement outside Eleanor's quiet cottage. Nestled at the edge of a sleepy southern town, the house hadn't seen a visitor in weeks, maybe months. Eleanor, now in her 80s, sat curled in her favorite floral armchair near the front window, sipping chamomile tea and watching the rain slide down the glass in lazy rivulets. Her joints ached more than usual, the damp weather always made them worse. A jazz record hummed softly from the corner, filling the silence that had become her constant companion since her husband died. Then came a knock. Not a loud, impatient one, just 3 soft taps. She paused, cup midair. Who could it be? The mail had already come, and no neighbors ever stopped by unannounced. Setting her teacup on the side table, Eleanor shuffled to the door, her slippers scuffing against the wooden floor. The porch creaked as she opened the door, and what she saw froze her in place. 2 children stood there in the rain, twins. A boy and a girl, no older than 9. Soaked to the skin, they wore matching blue raincoats too large for their thin frames. The hoods hung low over their eyes, water dripping from the edges. The boy held the girl's hand tightly, both of them staring up at her with wide, unreadable expressions. Eleanor blinked. Her voice came out as a gentle, uncertain murmur. "Goodness, where are your parents?" The girl didn't answer. The boy looked up slowly, his voice quiet but clear. "Are you Eleanor Bennett?" She hesitated, taken aback. "Yes, I am." He nodded slightly. "Then, we're supposed to come to you." Eleanor looked past them, out to the empty street. No car, no adult. Just 2 children, standing at her door in the middle of a storm. A strange, inexplicable feeling prickled at her chest, something between confusion and fear. She stepped aside slowly, heart beginning to pound. "Come in, quickly, before you catch your death out there." As they stepped into the warm house, dripping water onto the old floorboards, Eleanor had no idea that these small strangers were about to unravel everything she thought she knew about her past. The children sat quietly at the edge of Eleanor's faded floral couch, wrapped in soft towels she'd pulled from the linen closet. The fireplace crackled to life, a modest flame bringing warmth to the chilly room. Eleanor moved carefully between them and the kitchen, fixing cocoa the way she used to for her daughter, extra marshmallows, even though her hands trembled slightly as she stirred. She couldn't stop glancing at them. The boy sat upright, protective, always glancing at the girl. The girl leaned slightly into him, eyes scanning the room with quiet caution. Eleanor returned with 2 warm mugs and set them on the coffee table. "Here, drink this. You must be freezing." The boy nodded politely. "Thank you." The girl murmured something so soft it was almost inaudible. "Thank you, ma'am," before wrapping her hands around the mug. Eleanor sat in the nearby chair, folding her hands tightly in her lap. "Now, can one of you tell me what's going on? Why you're here all by yourselves in this weather?" The boy glanced at his sister, then back at Eleanor. "My name is Micah. This is my sister, Malia." She nodded slowly. "All right, Micah. Go on." He reached into the damp pocket of his coat and pulled out a plastic bag. Inside was a letter, old and creased, the envelope worn thin from handling. "This was in our mom's things. It said if anything ever happened to her, we should come here. To you." Eleanor took the envelope with trembling fingers, her breath catching in her throat. She recognized the handwriting instantly, elegant but familiar, filled with emotion. Her daughter's handwriting. Her, Lila. Her lips parted, but no words came out. She stared at the name signed at the bottom of the letter. Lila Bennett. The ink was faded, but it may as well have been written yesterday. She looked up, voice nearly cracking. "You're saying, your mother is Lila?" Micah nodded once. "Yes, ma'am, she was." Eleanor didn't miss the past tense. The room swayed for a moment as the weight of it all landed on her. Her daughter. Gone. And these children, they weren't strangers. They were family. Blood. Right here in her living room, asking for something, anything, from a woman they had never met, but who had unknowingly shaped their fate. Eleanor held the letter in both hands, her eyes scanning the faded lines over and over, as though doing so might somehow change what was written. The paper trembled slightly in her grip, not from the cold, but from the flood of emotion rising in her chest like a tide she couldn't stop. The scent of old paper and faint perfume clung to it, a ghost of her daughter's presence. Micah and Malia sat in silence, their cocoa untouched now, watching her with a mixture of caution and quiet hope. Eleanor finally spoke, her voice hoarse. Where did you find this letter? Micah answered, it was in a shoebox under Mama's bed. It had this address and your name. She said we should come here if she didn't wake up. Eleanor's heart clenched. 1,000 memories hit her at once. Lila as a child, with wild curls and that stubborn spark in her eyes. Lila, screaming through tears the night she left home for good, slamming the door behind her after Eleanor said the one thing she could never take back. And now, Lila's children were sitting here, living proof of the years that had passed without a single word between them. She unfolded the letter gently, taking care not to tear it. The words were raw, honest, painful. Dear Mama, if you're reading this, I'm probably gone. I never stopped loving you, but I couldn't raise my babies around hate or fear. I know you didn't mean to push me away, but you did. I hope time softened your heart. Micah and Malia deserve better than this world has given them so far. Please, if they ever find you, love them. For me, it wasn't just the words. It was the way Lila had signed it, your daughter, always. Lila. Eleanor swallowed hard, blinking away tears that finally spilled. She had imagined this moment for years, reunion, forgiveness, maybe even laughter. But not like this. Not with Lila gone. I didn't know, she whispered, mostly to herself. I didn't know you had children. Micah looked at her with something beyond his years. She didn't want us growing up with pain. She said she left so we'd never feel less than. Eleanor bowed her head, shame rising in her throat like bile. She had held her beliefs so tightly, thinking she was protecting her daughter, when in truth, she had driven her away. And now, she had missed everything. The birth of her grandchildren. Their first words. Their first steps. The letter lay in her lap like a weight, heavy with all the love and time that had been lost. She looked at the twins, two little souls caught in the wreckage of choices made long ago, and for the first time in years, Eleanor felt something she hadn't dared feel, the chance to make something right. Eleanor sat quietly in her armchair, her eyes unfocused, the letter still resting on her lap. The soft ticking of the old grandfather clock was the only sound in the room, except for the occasional pop of the fireplace. Across from her, the twins sat close together on the couch, watching her with wide, uncertain eyes. She finally looked up at them, her voice soft, as if speaking to ghosts. Did your mother ever talk about me? About our family? Micah hesitated, then nodded. Sometimes. She said you used to love gardens. That you'd sing to the roses when she was little. Eleanor's lips twitched, almost into a smile, but the weight of the moment kept it from forming. I did, she whispered. I used to sing her lullabies in the garden. She loved the yellow roses. Malia's eyes brightened. She'd planted yellow roses by our front window. That simple sentence struck Eleanor like a dagger through the heart. Her daughter had tried to carry pieces of her childhood into a new life. Despite the pain, the anger, the years of silence, she had still remembered. Still honored the little pieces of love buried under the hurt. Eleanor drew in a long, trembling breath. I said terrible things to her. The night she left, I didn't understand. I thought I was protecting her from heartbreak, from judgment, from a hard life. But in doing that, I became the very thing I was trying to protect her from. Micah looked down. She said, she forgave you. But she was scared you might not forgive her. Eleanor shut her eyes. The regret was like fire in her chest, burning, endless. She didn't do anything that needed forgiving. It was me. It was always me. She thought of Marcus then, Lila's fiancé, the young man she had never truly given a chance. He had been respectful, soft-spoken, clearly devoted to Lila. But Eleanor's pride and fear had blinded her. She had seen only differences, not love. And in doing so, she'd cast her only daughter into the world alone. Eleanor reached for a photo album from the nearby shelf. It was worn and dusty, untouched for years. She opened it slowly, flipping through pictures of Lila as a child, birthday parties, Halloween costumes, days at the lake. She turned the album so the twins could see. That's your mama, she said gently, pointing to a photo of Lila with ice cream smeared across her cheeks, laughing in the sunlight. She was the light of my life. Malia leaned forward, her small finger tracing the picture. She always laughed like that. When she cooked. When she danced in the kitchen. Eleanor felt her throat tighten again, but this time the tears came more freely. She let them fall, not caring. She didn't want to be strong in this moment. She wanted to be real, for them. The room was quiet again, but something had shifted. The silence wasn't so hollow. It was filled with memory, grief, and something new, understanding. And in that stillness, Eleanor made herself a silent vow: she had lost her daughter. She wouldn't lose her grandchildren too. The rain had stopped by the time night blanketed the small town, but the damp chill lingered in the air. Inside the warm cottage, Eleanor moved quietly through the house, setting out spare blankets and fluffing pillows on the old pull-out couch. Micah and Malia had eaten a modest dinner, grilled cheese and tomato soup, and now sat curled together in pajamas that were far too big, borrowed from Eleanor's late husband's chest of old clothes. She had done her best, tying the waists with string and rolling up the sleeves. They were polite, grateful, but far too quiet for children their age. No playful chatter, no questions about the house or the fireplace or the old cuckoo clock on the wall. Just wide eyes that darted toward each other with every creak of the floor, every unfamiliar sound. Eleanor noticed it all. They had seen too much. After tucking them in with gentle hands, she turned off the overhead light and left only a small lamp glowing in the corner. "I'll be just in the next room," she said softly. "You don't have to worry. You're safe here." Micah gave a small nod. Malia pulled the covers up to her chin, clutching a worn stuffed animal she had carried with her since arriving, a floppy-eared bear with one button eye. Eleanor returned to the kitchen, her body weary but her mind wide awake. She couldn't stop thinking. Lila's voice echoed in her thoughts, imagined from memory. "If anything happens to me, go to her." How scared her daughter must have been. How alone. And now these two children were carrying not just their own grief, but the shadow of Eleanor's mistakes. She sat back down at the kitchen table, the letter from Lila folded neatly beside her tea. Her hands cradled the cup, steam curling up in faint wisps. Then, faintly, she heard it. A small, muffled sound. Eleanor stood, listening. It came again. A soft whimper. She followed it quietly down the hallway. Outside the living room, she paused, hand on the frame. The light from the lamp cast a golden halo over the children. Micah lay still, eyes open, staring at the ceiling. But Malia was crying. Silently, desperately. Little hiccuped sobs that she tried to stifle with her blanket. Eleanor's heart twisted. She stepped into the room slowly. "Sweetheart." Malia sat up quickly, wiping her face. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I'll be quiet." Eleanor knelt beside the couch, reaching for her gently. No, honey. You don't have to be sorry. You don't have to be quiet. Not here." Malia's lip trembled. "I miss Mama." Eleanor pulled her into a warm embrace. The child didn't resist, just sank into her arms, crying softly against her shoulder. "I know," Eleanor whispered, holding her tightly. "I miss her too. So much." For the first time in years, Eleanor let her own tears fall in front of someone else. She didn't hide them. The years of silence, pride, and pain had led to this moment, a fragile, beautiful collision of loss and love. As she held her granddaughter close, Eleanor knew, she couldn't change the past. But she could be present now. She could give these children what Lila never received in time: unconditional love. Morning sunlight filtered gently through the curtains, casting soft golden patterns on the living room walls. The storm had passed, and the world outside looked clean and still, like the earth itself had taken a breath. Inside the little cottage, the scent of buttered toast and scrambled eggs drifted from the kitchen, mingling with the faint smell of wood smoke. Eleanor moved about quietly, not wanting to wake the children just yet. She needed this moment alone, to steady herself, to process the emotions that hadn't stopped swirling since last night. As she stirred the eggs, she thought again about the letter, folded carefully and tucked now into the top drawer of her writing desk. She had read it 3 more times before going to bed, each time feeling like her daughter was sitting just beside her, speaking between the lines. "I never stopped loving you." That line would not leave her. It was both a comfort and a wound. From the living room, she heard the shuffle of small feet. Micah appeared first, his eyes still sleepy but alert. "Smells good," he said quietly. "Good morning, sweetheart," Eleanor replied, forcing a soft smile. "There's plenty for both of you." Malia followed a moment later, dragging her teddy bear by one ear. She climbed up onto the kitchen chair slowly, still wrapped in one of Eleanor's wool shawls. They ate in a hush, the clinking of forks on plates the only sound for several minutes. Then, after clearing his throat nervously, Micah unzipped the backpack he had carried with him since they arrived. "I have something," he said, pulling out a small wooden box. It was simple, dark-stained, with a brass latch. He pushed it gently toward Eleanor. "Mama told me to give it to you. She said it was for you, and you'd understand." Eleanor's fingers hovered over the box for a second before she opened it. Inside were photographs, dozens of them. Some printed at home on curling paper, others developed at a drugstore, still glossy with age. She lifted them one by one, Lila smiling in a sun hat, holding the twins as babies, blowing out candles, reading bedtime stories. In one, Lila stood in a sunlit garden, yellow roses blooming around her like a crown. Eleanor gasped softly, "Her roses. I planted those when we moved in," Micah said. "She said she needed them. They reminded her of you." At the bottom of the box lay a folded piece of paper, a birth certificate. Eleanor's eyes widened as she read the names. Malia Bennett, Micah Bennett, Mother, Lila Marie Bennett, Father, Marcus Devon, Legal Guardian, if Mother deceased, Eleanor Bennett. The document trembled in her hand. She wanted me to take care of you." Micah nodded solemnly. "She said you were the only family we had left. That even if you didn't know us, we were yours." Eleanor pressed the paper to her chest, the enormity of it hitting her in a way nothing else had. These children had come with hope, not accusation. Not anger. Only a quiet, aching faith that she would do what their mother believed she could, love them. She looked up, her eyes misty. "I've missed so much. But I won't miss any more. You have a home here. For as long as you want it." Malia smiled, small, hesitant, but real. Micah gave a slow nod, something deep and fragile settling behind his eyes. For the first time since they arrived, he looked like a child again, not just a protector, but someone who could let go. And for Eleanor, that moment felt like a gift. A beginning, tucked gently inside a wooden box filled with memories. That night, after the children had gone to bed, Eleanor sat alone in the living room, the house wrapped in an uncanny quiet that felt heavier than usual. The only light came from the fireplace, its soft flicker casting shadows across the walls and illuminating the scattered photos now laid out across the coffee table. She had spread them out carefully, tiny time capsules from a life she had never witnessed. There was Lila at the beach, her curls longer now, smile brighter, holding Malia on her hip as Micah splashed in the shallow surf. Another showed the three of them decorating a modest Christmas tree in a small, cozy apartment, tinsel crooked, lights uneven, but joy shining clearly in their faces. Each picture told a story Eleanor hadn't been a part of. It felt like reading a novel with the first dozen chapters torn out, replaced with photos and imagined scenes. She picked up a picture of Lila sitting cross-legged in a garden, arms around both twins, all three of them laughing at something just out of frame. The yellow roses behind them caught Eleanor's eye. They bloomed so brightly, almost defiantly. Lila had carried them into her new life. Even when Eleanor hadn't deserved to be remembered, her daughter had remembered her anyway. A deep ache built in Eleanor's chest, the kind of ache that came not just from grief, but from years of pride and silence. She had chosen to be right instead of kind, to stand firm in her fears rather than open her arms. That choice had cost her everything. And now it had returned to her, not in anger or punishment, but in the form of two fragile, brave children seeking only a place to land. She stood slowly and walked to the hallway. The living room gave way to the small guest room, where Micah and Malia now slept curled beneath handmade quilts. She lingered in the doorway, watching them breathe. Their chests rose and fell in rhythm, small faces calm at last. Micah had one arm flung protectively across his sister, even in sleep. Malia's teddy bear rested beneath her chin. Eleanor stepped inside quietly and knelt beside the bed. She reached out and gently tucked a strand of Malia's hair behind her ear. Then, with the back of her hand, she brushed a tear from her own cheek. "I'm sorry," she whispered into the dark. "I should have been there. For her, for you. I can't go back, but I can be here now." Neither of them stirred, but the weight of her words felt important, spoken not just for the children, but for Lila too. Eleanor sat on the edge of the bed for a while, her hand resting near Micah's. She didn't want to leave them alone, not even in dreams. Eventually, she rose and tiptoed out of the room, gently closing the door behind her. Back in the living room, she stared at the fireplace for a long time. The flames had burned down to quiet embers. Then she crossed to her writing desk, pulled out a fresh sheet of paper, and began to write. Not a letter of regret. A letter of beginnings. To the court. To child services. To anyone who needed to know, these children had a home. Not just a roof and walls, but love, belonging, and someone who had finally learned the cost of silence. And would never choose it again. The morning dawned bright and still, the kind of morning Eleanor used to call a clean slate day. Sunlight spilled generously through the kitchen window, illuminating the wooden table where 3 mismatched bowls of cereal now sat, 2 half-eaten, 1 untouched. The twins were outside, playing on the patch of grass near the garden, their laughter drifting through the open window like music. Malia was twirling barefoot, her stuffed bear tucked under one arm, while Micah tried to teach her how to throw a frisbee with the stiff determination of a boy who had always needed to be just a little older than his years. Eleanor watched them from the sink, drying her hands on a tea towel. The phone call she had just ended still echoed in her ears. Child Services had answered kindly, patiently. She had explained everything, the letter, the birth certificate, the loss. Most of all, she had explained her heart, that she wanted to become their legal guardian, not out of obligation, but because she needed to. They had told her the process wouldn't be simple. There would be home visits, interviews, paperwork, waiting. But they also told her something else. Given your relationship and the documentation, it's very possible. The children seem to trust you. That matters. Eleanor stepped outside, the screen door creaking as she let it shut behind her. The air was warm on her face, tinged with the scent of cut grass and lavender. The yellow roses in the side yard had begun to bloom again, brighter than they had in years, almost as if they knew who had come to stay. Micah looked up. You okay? He asked, pausing mid-throw. She nodded, smiling gently. Better than I've been in a long, long time. Malia skipped over and grabbed Eleanor's hand with her small one, warm and sticky with juice. Can we plant more flowers? Mama said you were really good at that. Eleanor blinked back the sudden tears and crouched down to her eye level. Yes, baby. We'll plant so many you'll think we live in a garden. That afternoon, the 3 of them kneeled in the dirt together, planting marigolds, daisies, and more yellow roses. Malia dug eagerly, placing seeds with great care, while Micah read aloud from the little instruction packets like a foreman on a job site. Eleanor worked slowly beside them, her hands dirty, her heart healing with every movement. Later, as the sun dipped low in the sky, they sat on the porch with lemonade and peanut butter sandwiches. Malia rested her head on Eleanor's shoulder, dozing lightly, while Micah leaned against the rail, watching the horizon. Without looking at her, he asked, Are we really staying here? Eleanor looked down at him. If you want to. Forever, if you'll have me. He was quiet for a moment, then nodded. Mama said we'd find where we belong. I think, maybe this is it. Eleanor pulled them both close, arms wrapped around them like the arms of time closing around lost years. The pain of the past still lingered, but it no longer owned her. In its place was something fragile, beautiful, and real, a second chance. And Eleanor, once a woman closed off by pride and fear, now found herself at the threshold of a new chapter. Not written in regret, but in love.